Oh my God, guys, this story is amazing. I am back from Puerto Rico. I feel good. Valentine's Day week. We got a lot to catch up on, chaps. Doctor Doom is taking over the world, and it's amazing. And for good measure, at the end of this video, I'll give you guys a brief history of Doctor Doom taking over the world and even the multiverse over the course of Marvel Comics. But this opens up with the Doctor Doom speech, as it always does, because Doom makes the best speeches. And I'm so glad this is written by Ryan North, because outside of Hickman, man, he's got Doom on lockdown. So he says, "You rush to platitudes like drowning men swarming a lifeboat. Two peaceful nations will not choose to go to war with one another. You tell yourselves, as if repetition makes it true. Yet even a superficial glance at history proves it. Government will not save you. But no two countries colonized by the same fast food franchises have ever attacked each other, you plead. And this is equally untrue. Capitalism will not, cannot save you. Nothing can save you, save for the enlightened rule of a single person who can make the hard choices, who is above being bribed, being corrupted, who does not care about the petty comforts that confound other men. Doom is above money. Doom is above desire. Doom is above all. And in his magnanimity, it is his pity, in his greatness, that Doom will save you." Now, this is only the first part of it, right? Because he goes on and he says, "Earlier this morning, the leaders of every nation on earth, kings and queens and warlords and presidents, each willfully swore fealty to Doom. As of this moment, every nation on earth has become a province of a unified earth, a new grand United Latveria. To those watching this broadcast, I know it must be shocking for you. Changes to power hierarchies often are. And I know what you now expect. Perhaps slave labor, building eternal monuments to the glory of Doom, or perhaps death squads to hunt down the enemies of Doom, finally ending the threat of the dangerous and hated Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. No, and this is genius. He says, "For in the face of his unprecedented power, Doom is not petty. Doom is humble. Doom is magnanimous, and Doom begins his rule with but two small decrees. War between nations is, of course, outlawed. There shall be no conflict between Latveria's provinces. This is the new peace under Doom, the Pax Victoris. It is the first of Doom's gifts to the world. The second gift is this: you are all citizens of Earth, yet you have not been, until now, been treated with the same baseline respect that demands. You have struggled under inequality. You have been made to go without medicine, without knowledge. You have been made to pay for basic care, or you have been made to die. But there are certain privileges to being Latverian, and there is a certain minimum standard of living that Latveria bestows and insists upon for all of her citizens. Every nation will not only care for the bodies of her citizens through free and truly universal healthcare, but it will also care for their minds through elite tier education all the way to postgraduate levels for everyone who chooses to avail themselves of it. No longer shall the highest levels of attainment be reserved only for those who can afford immigration, much less schooling. These ideas, these easy, inarguable wins for civilization, are not new. They are expensive, yes, and complex, but they were never impossible. They have simply been left on the table through greed, through moral cowardice, and Doom suffers from neither affliction." Now, at the time that he's making this speech, there's just one example here of a military guy who's basically plotting to try to take out Doom, or at the very least, reduce the influence of Doom. But he continues on his speech and he says, "This is, incidentally, the moment when my address would have ended, were it not for an uprising already being planned against me in Kazakhstan. And I see there are also rogue elements in the militaries of Russia, Burundi, and India who move against Doom. And now, yes, Samovar, Canada, and even the United States. disappointing, but not unexpected. Change is always hard, but do not worry. These minor uprisings have already been dealt with. The Pax Victoris stands, and these provinces will not be punished, for Doom is mercy. But know that even Doom's mercy has his limits. So in effect, he kills everybody that's trying to rise up against him. And he says, my cabinet and I will be watching events closely from here in Latveria, working for our greater glory. There will be further broadcasts as events warrant. A final note, Doom has left your old leaders in place, free to govern just as they have before, save for the responsibility of implementing my orders. Your day-to-day will not change, except for, as you have already seen, certain significant improvements. Know too that this transition is being implemented with the full support of your leaders. Doom is wisdom, Doom is power, Doom is prosperity, and only Doom can save you. End transmission. Now, what Doom is doing here, right? And let's kind of have this little bit of a discussion about Doom historically conquering the world. So what Doom is doing here is a total breakaway of what he's historically done in Marvel. And it's the smartest thing that he could have really pulled off here. The first real, I would argue, notable instance of Doom successfully taking over the world was the Emperor Doom storyline. And what I'll do is I'll create a playlist that you can click at the end of this video that has all the stories where Doom has conquered the world, the ones we're talking about here. But Emperor Doom is where he used the powers of the Purple Man, Zebediah Killgrave, amplified them, and then took over the world essentially through mind control. This, of course, was a forced form of world domination, and one that society resisted once they realized what it was that was going on. There was this really, really cool statement made by Hawkeye at the end of the story after Doom was defeated, where he kind of mused, and he was like, okay, yes, we've defeated Doom. The world is back to the way that it was before. But when Doom ruled it, the world was better off, arguably, than it was before. There was no war. There was no stealing, no none of that stuff. The world knew peace. And Captain America's argument was, yes, the world is crappy now, right? It was better when it was under Doom, I guess, maybe. But like, people have freedom now. And so it was this really cool philosophical argument. Now, of course, you go into a few other stories beyond that. Doom War is one of the most notable ones where he almost did it again. But that was after he stole all the vibranium from Wakanda and used it to amplify his magical powers. That, of course, resulted in Black Panther having to nullify all vibranium in existence, and vibranium just became an inert chunk of rock. It had no magical properties or anything like that, right? It was no different than a piece of rock on the side of the road. It was due to the fact that they bought up country's national debt that Wakanda stayed rich, but the fact is, right, when you look at things like Secret Wars 2015, where Dr. Doom seizes control of the power of the Beyonders and then creates Battleworld out of what's basically left of the multiverse from the various incursions, it's all kind of been Dr. Doom in some capacity forcing his will onto existence. But what he's doing here is genius, because now he's no longer just seizing control of the world from people. What Dr. Doom recognizes is two things. Number one, in times of desperation, people will believe what they want to believe. Logic is completely irrelevant. Right? You know, like in times of desperation, people are logical beings more than they're rational beings. And so by appealing to that, he also appeals to the second thing, which is people are creatures of habit. The world can be burning down around them, but as long as they don't feel like their everyday life is changing much, people will be fine, right? People will be okay. People do not like it when things change drastically. And so by coming along and saying, life as you know it will essentially stay the same. It's just now you're being ruled by one guy, and all the other presidents, kings, queens, whatever, are really more just regents, right? They're generals or people like that. You know, they're just kind of keeping an eye on the places that now belong to me. People's lives don't change. And for the most part, everything's fine. But the bigger point to all of this, and something that we're going to notice by the end of this video, Dr. Doom is actually weaponizing the public against the superheroes. And that's the smartest thing he could have done. Because what this does is it switches over to a combination of the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. Yes, Storm is here, but Storm has recently joined the Avengers and Marvel, for those of you guys who have not been following up. And of course, this leads to Carol Danvers, who's currently the leader of the Avengers, just simply saying, like, I'm open to suggestions. And what's really interesting here is there's this amazing discussion back and forth, right? Where they're like, there's no way this is real, right? And it's just kind of like, no, I mean, this looks real. And they kind of analyze it in a variety of ways, right? Spider-Man asked the question, right? So with all those heads of states just going along with this, are we thinking like mind control? Right, being replaced by Doombots and some kind of, secret and especially third Doomy option or something like that. And Doctor Strange chimes in and is like, there has to be a reason that he's doing all of this, right? After having stolen the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme from me, right? It has to be something relative to magic. Now, for those of you guys who don't know about that, right, kind of a quick aside here to sort of fill in this gap, that Marvel had a story called Blood Hunt. And your mileage may vary on whether or not you enjoyed Blood Hunt as a story, but at the end of it, because the story basically revolved around Blade being possessed by this just ancient vampiric entity named Varney, essentially encasing the world in what was supposed to be eternal darkness, that only Doctor Doom really knew how to fix it. But he needed the powers of Doctor Strange to do it. And so Doctor Strange, quote unquote, temporarily lent his mantle of Sorcerer Supreme to Doctor Doom. Of course, Doctor Doom basically saved the day and then was like, you'll get your powers back when I'm done saving the world. Because I told you I was going to save the world, but this is just the first step. And so ever since then, he's been Doctor Strange, essentially. He's been the Sorcerer Supreme. Now, he's been going on various missions, right? The 8 Deaths of Spider-Man was tasking Spider-Man, but it seemed more like a distraction, right? Just like all these little campaigns and things like that. But he's been popping in and out of stories and just kind of like calling into question everything that makes a superhero superheroes, right? Like when he showed up to the Avengers, it was like, hey, Avengers, here's a question for you, right? If you were capable of making the world better, why isn't it better already, right? That kind of thing, right? That sort of, question that calls into question everything about them being heroes in the world. But that's why you see this kind of going back and forth and even a bit of arguing here. But one of the big questions Squirrel Girl asks here is like, if this is really something related to magic, then why has it not affected us too, right? Because during the Emperor Doom storyline, when he used the powers of the Purple Man, it affected everybody except for Simon Williams, because he was actually in like a tank designed to analyze his powers, so he was shielded from the effects of Doctor Doom's mind control. But at the same time, the statements made here, right, like Squirrel Girl's right, I feel the same mixture of fear, disappointment, and just being low-key impressed with Doom that I always have. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of like Wanda chiming in and saying, well, that's the good news. We're still ourselves. I do not detect any magical influence here, but neither do I detect it around the world's capitals. So he's not using magical abilities to take control of everything, but that's when Black Widow chimes in. The reason why was because she had just kind of been tailing Hydra for some time. And when she pops in here, she was like, so I'm patching you guys in because this is all about to get a whole lot bigger, because you pick up with Baron Zemo, right? And Baron Zemo, ever the guy who, if anything, wants to be the one to take over the world. So if for nothing else, seeing Doctor Doom as competition literally addresses the people, like the entire world, the same way Doom did. And he says, people of Earth, I, Baron Zemo, am reaching you using the same broadcast override that Doom did, but unlike him, I will make this brief. Many of you do not like me, but don't worry. We in Hydra have long known that we do not need your love to earn your respect. And if you know anything, know this. Neither Baron Zemo nor Hydra itself will ever be ruled over by anyone, much less by a ruthless, degenerate mongrel. The very idea is laughable. Doom playing at being emperor, a man whose ancestors never even earned themselves a homeland. My forces and I are on the edge of Latveria. The barrier surrounding it is permeable to us thanks to our superior Hydra technology. We now march on Doomstad. We march on Doom, and we will end this ridiculous charade once and for all. And he's like, Hydra, move out. And then it cuts. Now, at that point, Black Widow is just like, I'm going to follow them in. But no, like, I don't know what this barrier is about. So you guys may end up losing my signal. And of course, this signal fades. And so at that point, they're like, we got to go, right? I mean, like, honestly, we're not going to work with Hydra, because the initial thought of Tony Stark is, I know we don't really like Hydra Cap, but like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And Steve Rogers is like, no, never, right? At this point, we're facing off against 2 enemies now. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of like, okay, we need to get there to Doomstat, right? If they can penetrate the force field in Doomstat, so can we. And that's our chance to take down Doctor Doom and to end this campaign before it gets off the ground. Because between Reed Richards, the Fantastic Four, And those individuals like Doctor Strange, Tony Stark, whether between their magical prowess, their intelligence, or just history with Doom, they know the longer this goes on for, the more dug in Victor's going to become, and the more difficult it's going to be to oust him. And so Susan Storm, and probably one of the coolest things that I think I've ever seen her character do, just creates like a gigantic invisible 747. And it's just like, let's fly. And so they just kind of like take off right to Doomstat. But when they get there to where this barrier, right, encases the lands, the Thing, of course, goes to punch it, believing that he can at the very least do enough damage to crack it, and nothing happens. And that's when Black Widow shows back up, and she's like, now you guys see the problem that I had following them in. She's like, I tried to tell you guys, but the signal was getting interfered with and all that kind of stuff, but like, you can't get in there. Right? I could not get in there. Like, I don't know how in the world they got in there, but like somehow they're inside. And so we need to figure out a way to get in. But at the same time, what also goes on is in the middle of all of this, right? Suddenly, Baron Zemo lights up a broadcast alongside Doctor Doom. And he's like, actually, everybody, I was mistaken. And the way this is done is kind of hilarious. I love the way that Ryan North does this, right? Because it's not grandiose. He's like, hello again, Earth. Baron Zemo here to announce that in fact, I was mistaken. Doom is doing what's best for the world, and Hydra's going to join him. There is a better way, and Doom has found it. So he's just kind of like, anything that Doom needs, Hydra will help him with. We will be the way in which Doom builds school systems and all this stuff to make the world a better place for you, the people. And so it's kind of fascinating because like, everybody here is like, dude, it's gotta be fit. There's no way this is real. There's no way that Hydra is working alongside Doctor Doom. Number one, because Doctor Doom doesn't respect Hydra. They're holdovers from the Germans during World War II. He's never gonna ally himself with those guys. And at the same time, Hydra would see Doom as a threat to their ability to rule. No way would Baron Zemo bend the knee to Victor Von Doom. Not a chance. Something has to be going on. And so in turn, they split in two, because one of the things they pick up on is the fact that there's a broadcast, right? That broadcast seemed to originate from Hydra's actual flying city, right? It's crazy. It's huge in size, but it's just a flying city out there in the world. And so splitting the teams in two, one half will stay here in Latveria and try to figure out a way to crack the shield. The other half will travel to where where Hydra is and try to take them out as well and deal with Baron Zemo directly. Now, the other thing I love about this, the way that Ryan North handles it, is that it feels very much like the old Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Roy Thomas, Steve Englehart kind of story, where it's like, instead of giving you a time frame, it's just like, shortly, ... I love the way that happens. But ultimately, like, the Avengers make their move, or at least one part of the team makes their move. So you've got Iron Man, Reed Richards, Sam Wilson, you've got Storm, and so on. When they show up here, that Baron Zemo's just like, yep, they're making their move, right? And so at that point, he tells his guys, get ready for the attack, right? Like, attack all of these guys. Now, the fight that breaks out here is not the most significant fight, but again, the superhero's desire to preserve life is arguably their weakness in a circumstance like this. That yes, they're willing to take out members of Hydra, but they also kind of want to preserve life as best they can because they're heroes, and that's exactly what they're supposed to do. The cool thing about this is that initially the door to the Hydra fortress is just unbreakable, right? Nobody can get through it. It's fortified and all that kind of stuff. But like, Iron Man destroys it, right? Like, he literally obliterates the entrance to this place. But the way he does it is amazing. Because what he does is he tells Baron Zemo, because Baron Zemo is just like, what is this madness, right? And he says, you know, quick tip for you, it's something Black Widow once told me. You can secure a door as much as you want, but it's only ever as secure as the wall that it's attached to, which is kind of true, right? Like, this, if you can't get through the door, just knock down the wall, right? So it's it's kind of genius, right? Just how they have this whole interaction. But the fight between them is intense, but Captain America immediately picks up on the fact that something's wrong, right? Something is off here. That something with Baron Zemo isn't quite right. Because at that point, it's like, you dare place hands upon Baron Helmet Zemo? That's not how he talks. It's not how he normally conveys himself, right? He's like, Hydra will not permit this. Doom will not permit this. And that's when the question is asked, when does Hydra submit to Doom? And the question that's asked here by Steve Rogers is, what do you know of October 1st, 1945? Zemo doesn't know. And that's where Steve Rogers is like, that's exactly what I thought. And he knocks his head off his shoulders, and it's a Doombot. it's not really Baron Zemo. And so one of the cool things, right, when the Doombot head is handed over to Reed, Reed reveals here that for the longest time, he's actually recovered Doombots under various circumstances. They all carry recordings, and that Reed himself has actually been able to crack these and access the recordings, something that Dr. Doom never really fortified against. One, because he never believed anybody could do it, and because he didn't know that Reed could do it, he's never had a reason to believe that anybody's ever actually done it. And so when they do this, what you end up seeming to learn here is that Baron Zemo had at one point encountered Victor Von Doom. And when that happened, Doom killed him, annihilated him on the spot, and then turned him into a Doombot, right? And so he's like, wow, like, and that's where Storm's like, he really did take the easiest path available. He killed Zemo and then replaced him with an obedient Doombot. But here's the thing, sometimes the best plans are the simplest plans. The ones that are just the easiest to implement. And what's easier to do here, right? Use some grand, magical spell to, ensnare, Baron Helmet Zemo, who's already experienced against virtually every kind of superhero out there and would likely be fortified against it, right? Or to just be like, kill him and replace him with a Doombot. Like that, right? It's just the easiest thing to do. And it's the smartest thing to do. Because then at that point, the question asked by Johnny Storm is, does this mean that he's killed every world leader and replaced them with a Doombot? And that's where Tony Stark is like, that's our next problem, man, right? For right now, Doom's lying to the world, right? He's acting like he's changing into this great leader, trying to buy love with bread and circuses, but he has not changed a bit. And we just found the smoking gun. And it's like, what we have here is proof that this whole thing is a fraud founded on death. And so he asked the question, right, Reed, can you duplicate that broadcast override? A lie can travel around the world much faster than the truth can, especially if the truth isn't as interesting as the lie. And he's like, I want to give the truth a fighting chance. So of course, Tony broadcasts out to the world, and he kind of, really addresses the situation. He's like, okay, guys, look, so it's been a crazy morning, right? Dr. Doom addresses all of you saying that he's taken over the world, and then Baron Zemo addresses you and says, no, he's not, and now we're addressing you saying neither of them are, right? So yes, I'm sure it's just kind of been an emotional roller coaster, or maybe it's just a Tuesday, right? I guess it kind of depends on what you have going on in your life at the moment. But the fact is, he's like, what's going on here is Dr. Doom is not the hero that he's pretending to be. Dr. Doom is just like the Dr. Doom he's always been. And so what he does, or at least what Iron Man does, is he broadcasts the footage to the world of Dr. Doom killing Baron Zemo and replacing him with a Doombot. And so when that happens and he addresses, right, everybody in the world, Hydra also overhears this. And so Hydra realizes Dr. Doom killed their leader. And so while Hydra, this entire time, has been like helping to build facilities and different things like that, which seems to have been done in record pace. I mean, seemingly a couple hours ago, right? Baron Zemo was like, we're going to attack them, right? And now they're already like building stuff. It's kind of nuts, right? Villains are nothing if not efficient. That in turn, Hydra just loses it, right? And they're just like, our leader's been murdered, right? Like, all of your lives are now forfeit. And they literally turn their guns on everybody. Now, what's crazy is Alicia Masters seems to be here with Baby Ben, right? So it's just kind of like, this is nuts, right? Like, this is kind of wild, because at that point, when they make their move and they go to start attacking people, Dr. Doom shows up riding a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And if ever you need to question the greatness of Dr. Doom, if ever there were a moment in the history of your life, of your existence as a comic book fan, where you sat and wondered, is Dr. Doom really as awesome as people say he is? Let this answer that question. I mean, let this answer that question, ladies and gents. Right? Because with this just gigantic Tyrannosaurus Rex, that in turn, he actually addresses the world and does the perfect answer here. He says, my loyal subjects, a confession. I did lie to you, but I do not apologize for it. And he says, yes, I killed Zemo. Months ago, I killed the Red Skull too, right? These guys were, in short, a problem, one that Earth's mightiest heroes have been trying and failing to solve since World War II. But Doom did it for you in a day. A slight deception, a simple lie of omission, and I had Hydra clearing landmines. I had them building schools, hospitals. Unfortunately, the Avengers and their ilk could not stand it. So rather than risk their decades of ineptitude, their fundamental torpidity being revealed, They tore down my work. If they couldn't save you, then they would ensure no one else could save you. He makes them look like villains, right? He makes it look like, kind of presents a statement like they don't want you to have a better life. I'm trying to give you a better life, right? I'm trying to give you a life beyond the world that they provide you. The world they provide you is a world of suffering. They provide you a world of struggle and strife, all under this banner of freedom and all that kind of stuff. But I can give you a better world. All I ask is for a small willingness to recognize me as your leader. What's more important to you? To keep your lives exactly the same and for them to become better than they are right now and to bend the knee, or to live in a world of corruption and greed that is protected by superheroes who are more a part of the problem than a part of the solution because the world's not better and it hasn't been better since they've been here. Which one is better, right? And so he kind of leaves the question to the people, right? Like, which one is better to you? And as this whole broadcast is being made, Tony Stark is like, he saw us coming, right? And Reed's just like, yeah, man, we played right into his hands. We played right into this hands, right? And he says, in this way, those so-called heroes were correct. This was the only chance to bend Hydra to useful ends, and it is now truly dead by their hands. But I will clean up their mess. You are safe and you are cared for. Doom is wisdom. Doom is power. Doom is prosperity. And so literally you have Alicia Masters here, right? The girl of Ben Grimm, where she's like, only Doom can save us. So it's no longer this situation of like Dr. Doom trying to take over the world and the superheroes are trying to fight him because they don't want to see the world change. Instead, it's now a story of the people believe in him. So what do you do if you are a superhero and you see that a villain is trying to take over the world? And now it's not just a fight against the villain. You're trying to convince the people that he swayed that the life that they're walking away from is somehow better than the life that they're going to, despite all the evidence to the contrary showing that under his rule and his leadership, life would be better, right? You're asking them to walk headlong into a worse world. No one's gonna do that. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Let me know what you guys think about this so far. This story is incredible at the moment. I'm so excited to see where it goes. But thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.